in the house. That's pretty crazy. Yo, thank you so much to the Green Space for allowing us to have this event. And thank you so much to everyone who showed up. Seriously, this wouldn't happen without you guys. So, yo, shouts out to you. Do this. Thank you so much. All right, so my name is Ayman Ismail. I'm the host of the Man Up podcast, and this is the very first live taping of Man Up. So, yeah, we out here. All right. So I got to remind you guys, season 2 of Man Up is about to come out November 13th. I don't know how you guys are going to write that down, put it on the calendars, unsilence your phone, silence them again, whatever, create a tick. Anyways, so season 1, we tried to tell stories and excavate where our earliest ideas about masculinity came from. So we did an episode about, like fighting and why we want to fight. And we also did episodes about why it's so hard to talk about our emotions and XYZ. But for season 2, we're going to be taking things a little bit further. We're going to try and understand, what's next. So say you recognize this vulnerability inside you. What do you do with that information? So we're going to be trying to share solutions, which I'm pretty excited about. So we have a few episodes that are going to be coming out very soon. One of them is about a guy who really, really, really wants to lose his virginity. That's the first one, yo. So yeah, but it's not about like sex. It's about trying to understand why there's so much weight and pressure put onto this kid. He puts it on himself. He's like 25 years old, which is a totally reasonable time to be a virgin, but he can't have it like that. So we're gonna try and find solutions. We're also doing one about why it's so hard to buy men gifts. Like, why is that a problem? Christmas is coming up. It's crazy hard. I mean, we asked people in Union Square, what do you want for Christmas? And all of them were like, I don't know, world peace? I was like, yo, shut up. Anyways, so when is it coming out? When's season 2 launching? I love you guys. Anyways, so for the live show, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. It's kind of like an open forum type format. Where we're going to be bringing on guests one by one to explore their expertise and their relationship to crying and emotions. So first up, we're going to have Joel Anderson, who is incredible. He's one of the smartest people I've talked to, one of the coolest guys. He's from Texas. He's the host of Slow Burn Season 3. And I don't know if you guys know about Slow Burn. You should. It's right now top 10 on Apple Podcasts. We squeezed out Dolly. What was her last name? Dolly Patron? Nobody cares. You know what I mean? It's all about Joel right now. It's all about Slow Burn 3. So that's happening. Anyways, so I wanted to tell a short story. When I was about 9 years old, I was going to an Islamic school in Jersey City. Those things exist. And I guess it was like low budget, but they really wanted us to feel like we were normal kids. So they would have us do Boy Scouts, but it would be like Islamic Boy Scouts. And they would also have us do karate, but it was like Islamic karate, which was fine, I guess. But it was really hard for me because I've always been an emotional guy. For me, it's always been like tough exterior, soft interior. But during that time, it was just all soft, right? I didn't go to school in Newark yet at that point. So I'm serious. So I got punched in the chest really hard and it hurt. We weren't wearing pads because it's Islamic karate and that costs money. So we're not going to have pads. And I started crying. I had to catch my breath and everyone started laughing. And we're 9 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, yo, Ayman, why are you crying in front of these people? You're not supposed to. You're not supposed to allow people to see you cry. And that was probably the earliest and most visceral memory I have about crying. It was humiliating and really embarrassing. And if it were to happen nowadays, even though I think it might be more acceptable to cry, a part of me still wants to retreat and, protect myself from that kind of ridicule and criticism. So that's what Man Up is all about. It's all about trying to identify where these ideas come from and take a second to actually think about it and sit with those ideas and feelings. So it wasn't until I got to school in Newark, New Jersey, where you kind of relearn to live life out on the playground. We were playing games like Bloody Knuckles, Kill the Man with the Ball, Suicide. It was fun, but in the back of your mind, you have to be thinking to yourself, like, this is grit, this is tough, this is grown-up stuff. Like, this is what's gonna make me into a man. And that's probably one of the earliest times I've ever heard the phrase, keep it real. You guys know what that means? Who here knows what keep it real means? I see one guy nodding his head. I'm gonna tell you what it means. It means being stoic, being unbothered by your emotions, being the person who's going to give you that level-headed address every time, who's going to be a leader, who's going to stand out, and who's going to give it to you real every time. It's ironic, though, because at that age, keeping it real for us meant we have to be a different version of ourselves. I thought that was interesting. Anyways, so on Slow Burn Season 3, I have to get his name right, they interviewed a hip-hop journalist named Cheo Hodeiri. I'm not going to say that correctly. But anyways, they interviewed a hip-hop journalist about how keeping it real in the 90s and the 80s ended up getting a lot of people killed. So I didn't mention this, but Slow Burn Season 3 is all about the murders of Biggie and Tupac and how these two people went from being best friends to enemies, and how both of them got killed and none of their murders got solved. It's a really riveting story. I encourage you guys to subscribe. So to talk about keeping it real, I wanted to invite Joel Anderson.
What's up, y'all?
What's up, Joel?
Hey, man.
How much of that did you hear?
I heard about a fifth of it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So you're caught up.
Yeah, right. I heard you talk about Cheo. So I heard the part about talking about Cheo and keeping it real. So yeah.
So talk to me about that. What is keeping it real mean to you?
Well, let me say this. So it actually meant nothing to me for a long time, because it's kind of like when you told me that this was going to come up. It reminded me of when I was like a teenager or college, and you'd like want to talk to a girl or something, they'd be like, well, man, just be yourself. And I'm like, well, who the hell am I? I don't, what does that actually mean? I me, myself personally, like that's not enough to attract anybody, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about that and the way that we sort of thought about it back then, when I first started hearing Keeping It Real in the 90s, it was like, basically, it's yourself to the nth degree. Like, you're not really your total authentic self, but it's like putting on like sort of some armor to go out into the world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like so you can take on the world, and you're still kind of yourself. I mean, it's not like you're gonna wild out and be, blue and red flagging or anything like that, or being a thug or whatever. But it was like, you got to be kind of hard. You kind of like show people that like you can move through the world in such a way that people won't mess with you. You know what I mean? And that's what I always took Keeping It Real to mean, like growing up in the 90s, the wild ass 90s, for those of y'all that remember that.
So did you feel like you had to keep it real when you were a kid?
Oh, hell yeah, man. So do you remember, like, so a lot of people, the term, like, I just remember during the 2016 presidential election, I'm so sorry, but when people were talking about super predator, and like, that Hillary Clinton had once upon a time used that term. And like, there was actually a legitimate fear in the 90s that like we were on the precipice of like turmoil, that like crime rates were as high as they'd ever been. They were incarcerating people at like a ridiculous rate. And you'd read like these ridiculous stories about people getting shot over their Jordans, or somebody, getting stepped on, or, you get your starter jacket took somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so like, you had to like go out in the world with that, you know what I mean? And so you didn't want to be a mark. You didn't want to be, somebody that somebody thought would be a target. So I'm not saying that I was like some rough, am I allowed to curse? My default setting is cursing, so I have to know before I do it.
So we have the privilege of actually asking the audience.
Am I allowed? Keep it real. Okay,
Keep it real.
Yeah, I wasn't no rough, tough motherfucker, you know what I'm saying? But, But I was just but I didn't want anybody to think that like I was a mark either. And so you move through the world in a way that you just like, yo, like, don't try me, so I'm watching my back. I see you, you know what I'm saying? So that, to the extent that what we thought keeping it real meant back then, that's sort of how I carried myself. Like, I was a nerd at heart, but
yeah.
but I didn't get beat up neither, you know.
I got jumped the first day when I went to Newark Public Schools.
Damn.
So it was one of those situations.
Hard life, bro.
You know, like the term you get dropped, right? With somebody that'll come from behind you and they'll like kind of pull you down and then kind of like stomp for like a second.
Yeah.
But they're kids, so it's like they can't really do real damage, you know?
Right.
They're like 13, 12-year-olds.
Man, I don't know. You can get beat up by a 13-year-old, man. I don't know. I saw people got tossed up at that age, man. So you must have been tough. You tough about that.
I was on the ground, and I felt like I had two options, right? I could either just kind of like walk away, see if I can like snitch to a teacher or something like that, be that kid.
Yeah.
Or I could try and like grab somebody's leg and bring him to the ground and scare some folks.
Right.
And that's what I did. And then after that, they were like, "Oh, we're just playing."
Yeah, right.
And then they got up, and one kid kind of tapped me on the shoulder, like, "Yo, welcome to Newark." I was like, "You could have just said that."
That's baptism. That's your baptism. Every time me and Eamon started talking, he got to talk about his hands, man. He's like, "Yo, I used to beat people up."
I'm not even that good. It's
man.
I had the size.
You told me your record was pretty thorough, as far as I remember.
Because I was, you gotta understand, I was this size, this height. I was like 6 foot.
Oh, you were a giant, bro.
The 8th grade.
Yeah, man.
I was captain of the basketball team by default.
Yeah, no way. 6 foot tall in 8th grade made you like a giant, for real. Yeah, I remember the dudes playing middle school basketball that were over 6 feet tall. They're like legends to you in your mind in 8th grade, because you're like, yo, that dude kind of has like some peach fuzz, and he's like 6 foot tall. It's like he's like a man. You playing a man, basically. So
I did deepen my voice at that time. I was like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, right.
So I wonder how that played into how you handle your emotions now as an adult. Do you have that urge to want to keep it real from time to time?
That's a good question. That wasn't on there. You throwing me off. So I mean, obviously it's different. I'm 41 years old now, so I'm not living a life. First of all, I live in Palo Alto, California. To say my wife leaves the door unlocked our house all the time. I'm just like, what are you doing? Yeah. Nobody knows the address, so I think we're okay. So it's like I live a very like easy life. So it's like very easy for me to be myself because I move through the world in which way like there's not very few threats to me. So it's like very easy for me to like, to the extent that there is an authentic self. Like, it's very easy for me to be me. Like, I can, be left alone, scroll through Twitter, read books, go jog, just whatever. And so, like, it doesn't have the same importance or resonance to me keeping it real, because, like, I'm just myself all the time. Now I'm 41. I've had a lot of experiences. I don't have anything to prove to nobody. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I guess, like, this is probably the most real version of me keeping it real at this point, because, like, there's just no need for me to put that armor on when I'm going through the world anymore. But like, there are people that, like, I'm not better than anybody that's like doing that, because they may be in a situation. So I always try to understand it. Like, when, certain people have to do that just to get through life. Like, doesn't matter, like, man, if I was in a prison yard, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't just be the dude that, that like made jokes about, things I'm laughing about on Twitter or whatever. Or, like,
and stuff,
right. So I don't live that life anymore, I guess.
So I know you used to play football.
Yeah.
And that's like a very painful sport. Like, I played football, but not at the level that you played it at. Yeah. College football is a beast, right? So
yeah, we weren't very good, but okay.
But like, when I got tackled, it hurt, right? I would like still get up and I'd pretend to like, I'd be like, that wasn't that hard, right? But I still feel it,
right?
And I wonder what it must have been like for you when you were playing football.
I really enjoyed hitting people and getting hit. Like, that was like the part of football I enjoyed the most. Like, just like being physical and that kind of, like, I thought practice sucked because you're just going through drills, you're up on the ground, they say get up off the ground, like, don't take it to the ground. Yeah, but like, I liked the part where you could be physical and get hit and stuff like that. That was very fun to me. And I read this in a book called The 100-Yard Lie when I was like a teenager, and it's a guy he ended up becoming a writer for Sports Illustrated, but he had played, he was like all Big Ten at Northwestern in the 60s, whatever that, who knows how good Northwestern, I assume they were bad because it was Northwestern and it was the 1960s, but, and he just talked about how he felt right or whole when like something was wrong with him, like physically, you know what I mean? And so like if I had like cuts on me or something, or like I had like a little limp or whatever, I was like, oh, well, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That feels good. That's how I'm supposed to be.
It's like a badge of honor at that point.
Yeah.
It's like proof you put in the work.
Absolutely. When I played football, the most serious injury I had, I fractured my hand and I sprained my ankles. And those weren't big. I don't think of those as big deals because I didn't like have a season injury or anything. But there was never a time when I got hurt so bad playing football that like I was in a position to where I had to cry or anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? I cried when we lost.
Was that okay? Did everybody cry with you?
Hell yeah. I mean, they should have cared like I did. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I felt. I was like, man, we lost, dog. You only get so many games in football. One loss is a big huge chunk of your season. You know what I mean? So my senior year against our rival, St. Thomas, and I went to a school called Straight Jesuit in Houston, and we lost 14-7. And the difference in the game was that I fumbled, and a dude returned my fumble for a touchdown. No. So we lost 14-7. Game's over. We couldn't make the state playoffs, and like I'm just on the field crying, and like the cheerleaders are running around. I just will never forget like that whole crazy scene going on around me, and I was just sitting there like, yo, I've really messed up. The funny thing about it though is that dude who recovered that fumble, like he's opened like the most famous barbecue restaurant in Houston.
Oh no!
And I'll never go. Greg Gatlin, I fuck you. I will never go. I will never eat your barbecue because
you got to keep it real.
Yeah, man. And also I was down. Technically, I feel like my forward motion had stopped, but that's another story. Yeah.
I respect you, and that's why I'm never gonna go either.
Yeah, right. They're good, man. There's plenty of other barbecue places in town anyway. Why would I do,
Yeah.
Galen's Barbecue, they might have roaches. I don't know.
So I always think back to what lessons I wish I knew as a kid when I was growing up. Like, I feel like with all the experience that I had, I would have been such a better 12-year-old. I wonder if that ever occurred to you. Do you ever wish that you could give yourself some advice when it came to like handling your emotions as a kid?
That's a good question. Man, I think there was a couple things. One, I'd be like, man, nothing that's happening to you is permanent right now. Like everything, all of this is impermanent. Like it won't even matter in 10 years. I don't even remember 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like what happened? I don't remember 22. So nothing that happened is so serious, right? And I'm old. I'm 41. So 22 is like, almost half my life ago. Wow. And then also I think the other thing is that it's just really important that you're true to yourself. And which I mean is like, don't be convinced to do things that you don't want to do, or don't be involved with people that you don't want to be, because like it's not really fair to them or yourself. By which I mean, so I'll give this example, and it's just so stupid. When I was a freshman in college, I was visiting my homeboy in college. Yes, I was out of town, and so like he got a call from his girl, and so they like, me, him, and his other homeboy were in this car, and we go over to this apartment complex, and there's like this big scene out in the parking lot. Yeah. And it's just like, you could tell, like, there's like, I don't know, something about to pop off, whatever, I don't know. And so I'm in the back seat, my boy's driving, his other homeboy's in the front seat. I know our day that well. So all of a sudden, I grew up in the suburbs. I mean, it was segregated suburbs, but I grew up in the suburbs. I wasn't around no street shit. And so our day goes in the glove compartment and pulls out a little handgun. And I'm just like, how did we get here? You know what I mean? Like, and I wish I had been like, yo, chill. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? Like, this could be really bad. Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, I was just like, I guess it's time to ride. I don't know anybody in this situation other than my homeboy, but I guess it's time to ride. That could have been horrible. That could have ruined my life. Yeah. And I had no say in it. So I just think that like, if I had a 12-year-old or 17-year-old, I'd just be like, dude, like, speak up for yourself, defend yourself, like, be true to yourself. Say when you're uncomfortable with things, because like, you literally could be protecting like your reputation, your legacy, your life, you know? Yeah.
So, I mean, I had to bring it back to Slow Burn season 3.
Yeah.
You're interviewing some like very authentic OGs, people who were in Tupac's crew and Biggie's crew. Did you ever feel like it was like important to have them display their emotions? Like, what was that like to try and get them to open up on mic?
Oh yeah, man. Like that actually is one of the really, that's like one of the really difficult things about this is that, like, first of all, there's been so many people that have told the Tupac and Biggie story, right? So like, some people have been really, they've exploited these people's stories, and like they've just used it for like sensational things that that just focus on the deaths of these two people, right? Or, there's just been a bunch of people that have, approached all these people that were involved in their lives over and over and over again over the last 25 years, right? Yeah. And so like that's something I'm like really sensitive about. So we interviewed, I guess I can say it, like we interviewed this guy named Danny Boy who used to, sing I Ain't Mad at You, like, anybody that follows Tupac, he was on a lot of his cuts on, All Eyes on Me. And so we're asking him questions, like I'm just starting from the beginning. And so I'm steadily working my way up. And so then I get to the night that Tupac gets killed in Vegas and he starts crying. And I'm just like, I'll never forget, he was just like, I hate talking about this shit. And it just like killed me. I was like, oh man, I'm really sorry. I was just like, yo, take your time, it's fine, But like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, yo, I have to be really careful, I'm treating these stories with the utmost care because like they're not just, they're icons to a lot of other people. They're just a two-dimensional character from the 90s, right? But like they're actually people to these other people that we're talking to. And so like I'm trying to be respectful of their memories and the way that these people, the relationship to these people. So that part of it has been really tough. Yeah. Because then to show them like, yo, I don't want to like embarrass you. I don't want to tell a story that is like, sensational obviously there's parts of the story that are sensational. We're going to tell it, but like I don't want to sensationalize it, for an unimportant reason. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
To like hype it up.
Yeah. I'm not trying to hype it up, and like that's why I try to tell people straight off. I'm like, yo, we're not going to solve the murders. I'm not trying to like, or maybe we will. I don't know. Check. Stay through to episode 8. This is not an autopsy. You know what I mean? Like we're not just going over, hey, he got shot here. Who do you think shot him going in this car or whatever? So anyway, yeah.
There's the one moment from the first episode, and this is probably the last question I'm gonna ask you, but there's one moment from the first episode that really stuck out to me. It's the fact that when Tupac was out on the gurney and being rolled out of the studio, and he's raising the finger in defiance, and I thought this is a moment of real weakness for Tupac. This is he's got bullet holes in him and he's struggling, but he still wants to try and like keep it real and still wants to try and, let who he thought like might have put the hit out on him at the time, let them know that he's still here and he might come for them.
Yeah, no, man, Tupac is a really interesting dude. And I mean that with the understatement of all time, but I wasn't as much of a fan of his growing up. So like going through all of this stuff anew as a 41-year-old is sort of like a revelation, because not only am I like seeing all this stuff happen and seeing all this footage of him, but like I'm realizing, oh, Tupac was like really young. He was 25 years old. He was a baby, And so I can totally understand why he was like that. And then an important thing to remember about Tupac is that he was itinerant. He moved around a lot. He didn't have like a home base. And so he had to fit in constantly his entire life. Like he's always starting over, trying to fit in with people. So in New York, they're just barely making it. But in Baltimore, he got to be the art kid. You know what I mean? He got to be, go to school with Jada Pinkett, do theater. But then he moved to Marin City in California, which is like just north of San Francisco. And like, he's back at the bottom of it. He's in high school now, and he's skinny, broke, unathletic, failed at selling weed, and some people might have called him effeminate. You know what I mean? Like if I
just wonder what it might have been like, how different the whole story would have been had he been rolled out on that gurney crying, or just being emotional and allowing himself to be sad.
Yeah, but that's his whole life was like trying to like be like, yo, like I'm not a mark. I'm not a mark. Like he had to fit in it. So it was like, yo, like you can totally see how by the time he was 25, he had to develop an armor. He was like, yo, don't test me. You know what I mean? Because I'm not somebody that you can just fool with like that. I mean, Tupac was like 5'7" and 150 pounds too. Like he was not a big dude.
Yeah.
So like there are a whole lot of reasons why he would want to project strength and toughness to other people.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Joel.
All right, my pleasure, bro.
Can you guys give it up to Joel? If you haven't already, please subscribe to season 3 of Slow Burn. It's out of control good. All right, so the next guest, if you're a fan of Man Up, you might find familiar. He's actually the person who gave me my very first therapy session on mic. So things might get emotional up here, right? You know, just be sensitive towards that. Okay. So he has his own podcast called Hey Man. They release episodes periodically where they just have long interviews where they really go in depth about how people access their emotions. If you haven't heard that podcast, I recommend it as well. Please give it up for Avi Klein.
Hello.
Professional psychotherapist, and you're making time for us, man. This is awesome.
My pleasure.
If you want, feel free to bill Slate for the hours.
That's
man.
true. That's going to get expensive.
So I appreciate you coming on. I wanted you to unpack with me this one particular scene from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Now, this is a show that I grew up on. I ride for Will Smith. This is like, he's the real deal. But there's this one scene where his father comes back into his life, and then for no reason is just, I guess he's running away. He decides to leave Will again. And you kind of see Will go through the whole spectrum of emotions. It's kind of a long clip, so I hope you guys are ready for that. But it's, you just can't cut corners on this, you know? Do you guys have the clip?
I'm not gonna do your dirty work for you.
Fine. I'll call him from the road.
Yeah, then why don't you do that?
Yeah, I'll do that. Daddy-o! What's up? Will, man, I'm glad you're here. Some business came up I gotta handle. So we're gonna have to put our trip on hold. You understand?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Just for a couple of weeks.
I understand.
Yeah. Maybe a little longer.
Yeah, whatever.
Look, I'll call you next week and we'll iron out the details, okay?
Yeah.
It was great seeing you, son.
You too, Lou.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Will.
You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. You know, the Slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm
Will,
saying?
it's all right to be angry.
Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying this stupid present.
I'm sorry. If there was something that I
Hey,
could
you know
do-
what? You ain't got to do nothing, Uncle Phil. Hey, you know, ain't like I'm still 5 years old, you know? Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's Daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him? Hey, he wasn't there to teach me how to shoot my first basket, but I learned, didn't I? Hey, I got pretty damn good at it too, didn't I,
Yeah,
Uncle Phil?
you did.
Got through my first day without him, right? I learned how to drive, I learned how to shave, I learned how to fight without him. I had 14 great birthdays without him. He never even sent me a damn card. The hell with him! I ain't need him then and I don't need him now.
Will.
Now, you know what, Uncle Phil? I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him. I'm gonna marry me a beautiful honey, and I'm having me a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids. How come he don't want me, man?
How many people are crying right now? How many people are crying right now?
Like 2 nights ago, and I teared up, and if I wasn't sitting on stage, I'd probably be crying again. Every time I see that clip, I don't know, it gets me.
Oh, dude, and it's improv at the end, like the hug that wasn't supposed to happen. Oh my God.
Oh, you've gone deep on this.
Oh, I did my research. For research purposes, I watched the whole episode. You know. Yeah. So I remember when we did our interview for Man Up season 1. You talked about how anger was one of the only acceptable ways that men saw that they can express their emotions in.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through what happens in that clip?
Yeah, well, I mean, like what's happening? He's sort of like at first cold and instantly and like stung by it and kind of dismissive of his dad and kind of minimizing the importance of it to Uncle Phil. But like the anger just kind of keeps building up, which I think is totally right on. Actually, I would say like the difference between what Will Smith is going through and what I see with a lot of men is like he's right to be angry. You know, he's not like defending himself in any way. And then the anger, I think, kind of naturally leads to, I feel like you're hearing that like the 5-year-old that did stay up waiting for his dad at the end when he's tearful and wondering why, you know, believing that his dad just doesn't want him, you know. And so the anger kind of naturally leads to probably some like deep sadness, you know.
I feel like I relate to that scene so much, but like at least the first half where I'll want to be angry in exchange for any other type of emotion. Where this is a true story. My basketball got stolen, and this is like a brand new basketball, the one with like the pump inside the ball, so you can like just keep going. And I was really like sad because like I just got it, I saved up for it. It was like $30.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money for a basketball, and I just reacted with anger, and I was just shouting and screaming and warning everyone, yo, we have to find who stole the basket. Like, but all I really wanted to do was just be upset.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like...
Why couldn't you let yourself be upset?
Dude. I mean, for several reasons. One, there was like people watching, you know, especially people that I wanted to look up to me. And so I didn't think I could give them that idea that I might be the type of person to cry on because I lost a basketball. Because it is just a basketball, but it meant more than that to me. So I really felt like I was losing something important.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much that happens in all of our lives, and how much that happens maybe when to one of your patients who might resist crying at first.
Yeah, I think it happens a lot. And actually that's a really good example because wanting something not to be that way, you know, like this can't be happening, I got to get my ball back, like is so different from the kind of anger that I think we're seeing in that clip where he's angry about, there's no trying to make it not happen. He's angry about what actually happened, you know? So like when I talk about men sort of relying on anger to protect themselves against feeling sad, it's a lot in the service of like, I don't want to go there, you know, things can't be the way they are.
So are there ways that you try and encourage your patients to cry? I'm wondering, what is some advice that you can leave everyone when they go home to help them get in touch with that emotion?
Well, I think I encourage like my patients to be honest and real with their experience, and there's no pressure to perform and to cry, you know, because that just, you know, it's not like I think if you're feeling your authentic feelings, however that is for you, that's the point of therapy, you know. Yeah. But I guess I would say emotions in general are slow, you know. I think our minds move faster than our feelings. So if you're someone trying to get in touch with your emotions, giving yourself permission to take your time is really important, you know, just to sort of sit with it and maybe not think as much and maybe pay attention to how your body is doing, you know, like, I don't know, when I watched that clip, like I felt the sensation in my eyes, you know, I felt it like moving up my chest. So just to notice that is that's the beginning of tears, you know, and you can kind of like maybe take your foot off the brakes, so to speak, if you're a man in particular.
Yeah. Every time I cry, I always end up feeling better afterwards. And
me too.
and maybe like a little bit more vulnerable with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's another thing I realized is that I'm not always trying to like perform for other people. I'm also trying to perform for myself. I want me to feel like I have everything under control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when I cry, at the moment, I feel like maybe I'm losing control. But then afterwards, you know, everything after the tears stop and you kind of catch your breath and
Mm-hmm.
everything is resolving, I definitely do feel better. So I wonder if during your therapy sessions,
Yeah.
whether or not the whole session becomes easier after someone cries.
Yeah, I think you know what I think crying does for a person is like it makes it real in a way that just saying something is less real. Like you just feel like yourself, you know? Like these are your real tears. This is your authentic experience, and in a way that just even just saying, yeah, I feel sad about that doesn't quite capture it. So you feel more present, you know? And I think that's partly what feels good. The other thing that's good about crying is like, I mean, you just think about, like, we're hardwired. Babies cry to get their needs met, right? And crying is really like a social thing. It's not like we're all weeping in private. Like we cry with someone else. And so, and it draws the other person closer to you. So I think that feels good too. You feel more connected to those around you.
Wow. That's why I like talking to you, man. I feel like I can just ask anything and you have just the right answers. So I feel like I resist crying because sometimes it makes me feel better to know that I can handle things.
Mm-hmm.
And once I cry, I kind of am forced to confront the fact that happened, right? Like I need to like think about that. Like I caught myself crying once on the subway, on the G train. It's the most cryable train in the city.
It's a very New York experience, crying alone on the subway.
You know, I'm just sitting there with my headphones on. I'm listening to like Death Cab for Cutie, and I'm like, this is so hard. Life is so hard. And as soon as I got off the train, it was like nothing happened.
Uh-huh.
Like I was just...
You just put it away?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I felt like it was dealt with.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder if, you know, there could be some real penalty to maybe keeping yourself from doing that.
I mean, it's not like your head's going to explode or anything if you don't cry, but I think like what the penalty is if you're not, maybe this is like a different definition of keeping it real, but like if you're not real with your experience, then one, you don't know yourself as well. Mm-hmm. And two, I mean, it's just sort of like when I was listening to you and you were saying like, sometimes you don't want to cry because you want to know that you have to keep it together. Like, I mean, if we were working together, like the pressure to keep it together and what that means, like that's something to explore, you know, and because we put so much pressure on ourselves, like we can't fail, we can't make mistakes. And if you can't do that, then it really affects how you feel about yourself, you know, because you're just constantly pushing away this side of you that is wondering, like, am I making mistakes? Am I doing okay? And if you can't have compassion for yourself, which is, I think, also part of what crying entails, then how are you really going to make it through this world? You know, I think it takes a big toll.
Yeah. So when I watched that clip, a part of me is someone who tries not to cry, wonders what that might have been like if that character had been angry and stormed off and then just sat with those feelings without someone to comfort them, like Uncle Phil.
Yeah, by the way, I feel like we have to give a shout out to Uncle Phil there. Somehow he's like the emotional heart in some way of that scene, even though he's not doing all the acting. He's just like, it's because it's like him. I think we're all sort of like watching Uncle Phil, and like we feel like what it's like to be in the room with someone else's pain like that. And so I don't know, just wanted to acknowledge that. But what would the scene be like if he didn't cry? I guess it would be, I don't know. What do you think? It doesn't sound as interesting or as compelling. It just sounds like a tantrum or something like that.
It'd be like the situation where he'd go up to his room and put a hole
he's going to
through
slam the
wall,
door. Yeah, put a hole through the wall. Exactly. And I guess maybe we'd know what was going on, but not in the deep way that you get in that scene.
Yeah. or maybe he wouldn't even know what was going on.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Because when I try and hold my emotions in, they don't go anywhere. Like sometimes I'll just try and ignore them and put them away, and that works. But other times, they'll just like come back and they'll re-manifest themselves in something else, and they'll like kind of compound on whatever the next thing that bothers me is.
Totally. It's hard to like let something go if you're just, and I think it actually takes a lot of work to not feel something, that's like almost like constant work to just push it away. And in a way, it just keeps it on your mind instead of just feeling it and letting it go.
So what are some other ways that your patients resist getting in touch with their emotions, and how do you break through that?
They've got all kinds of ways. Changing the subject, laughing, looking away, squirming. I mean, all the things that I think we all naturally know how to do, because it's not like we can't cry all the time. So I sort of have the luck and the advantage of we're sitting together. I think they want to do this work, at least a part of them, so I can just sort of notice for them, like, oh, you looked away just now, or like, you just took like a really hard swallow. We would just stay with what's happening, kind of, I guess, in the same way that I'm saying if people pay attention to their bodies, they can feel their feelings. I think I'm doing some of that work for them, and just encouraging them, like, if you don't forget about your feelings right now, or if you don't dismiss it or make it like this big, it's really this big. And I also often, I think, kind of have to use myself and let them know how I feel, and lend them my feelings so that they can, if it makes me want to cry, or if I cry, then I think they feel okay crying too.
Wow. It's like the power of being vulnerable,
It's powerful.
So is it bad to just not want to cry?
Is it bad to not want to cry?
Like, if you're one of those types of people who refuses.
I feel like you're missing out. You're missing out on a big chunk of life, Like, there's so many things that deserve to be cried over, Like, it's just like, if you don't cry, you're just like, how much do you really care about these things, Or how will you know? How will you know how it really felt? You're just going to kind of, is the goal to just go through life and not be fazed by anything? That's one way to do it, but if you feel your feelings about this stuff, I think it makes it richer and deeper.
The way you talk makes me just project all of my feelings onto the words that you're using. Okay. And I hope that you guys are doing the same, because it's pretty crazy.
What's happening? Tell me, I'm curious.
It's pretty cool. So this is the last question, and I'm going to keep like trying to understand this, but I want to know what happens to our bodies when we build that wall, when we decide we're going to behave this way no matter what happens, and then try and stick to it. What happens?
Well, do you know in your own, I'm sorry to flip it on you, but like, what do you do when you don't want to cry? I know what I do, but like.
Oh, when I don't want to cry?
Yeah.
I will just change the subject, but in my head. Like, I'll just think about anything else. Like in our episode, we talked about how I'd like to just go to my favorite deli and get my favorite sandwich, and they use my favorite bread.
Right.
Because then by the time all that happens, get in line, order it, they make it, you eat it. I'm already thinking about the next thing.
So, I mean, like, one thing that would happen to your body is, like, you're going to put on some pounds from all those sandwiches. True. I mean, certainly, I think we probably, unfortunately, all know people who, instead of, like, a sandwich, are relying on, like, a drink, to manage their feelings. And so there's that effect of not being with your feelings. Sometimes, like, when if there's something that, like, I might feel sad about, I find myself clenching my jaw a lot, or like kind of like I'm just tense, and the tension I feel, it like really takes a toll on me physically, like the amount of tension I feel. I know people who like have upset stomachs a lot of the time because they're just suppressing so much feeling. So, it definitely can take a toll on you physically, even if you're not aware of what's going on. Because I don't think this is always so conscious, especially. It took me a long time personally to even realize how out of touch I was with my own emotions.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I certainly have other friends who, like other guys who kind of like remember probably like 10, 11, like when they just figured out like how to not cry anymore, because it's something you have to figure out. It's not like boys are hardwired to not cry. They do cry, and then you have to master it. And I remember feeling really good about that. But then like at some point, I think when I started to want to become a therapist and realized that emotions were important, like I realized it had been like over a decade since I'd cried to anyone. And I didn't know why, and it took work to sort of allow myself to have my feelings again.
How did you do that?
I think with time, I think first I started like up here, like giving myself permission. Vulnerability is good. That's important. I like
just decided that.
Yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, and kind of checking in with some of my judgments about crying and about, because I actually I am a pretty emotional person, and I probably would cry watching that clip like every single time, and like without shame. But and so like as a boy, like I definitely got teased for being like the kind of kid who cried a lot. So it was very conscious on my part to not cry. Mm-hmm. And so I really had to like change my attitude about that. And then I think if you change your attitude about it, learning to listen to your body and do the vulnerable thing of really sharing how you feel with someone you trust, then I think biology just takes over.
Yeah. One last story. I went to go watch that movie Up in theaters.
Oh my God.
Just hear me out.
No, it's a lot of tears. That first,
I
think my wife audibly sobbed in the theater. Yeah.
I went to go watch it with two of my best guy friends at the time. And, it's like the very first thing that happens to the movie. For people who haven't seen it, I'm going to spoil it anyway. I won't spoil it. But you end up, like, experiencing what she's experiencing just by how they animated it and the way they told the story with no words. And we were all just, like, sobbing and crying and looking over and, like, oh, that person's crying. I guess I can cry.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, none of us acknowledged it. We all just went home and we were like, oh, did you expect that ending? Nope, not me. Cool. All right, see you later. And I ended up wondering, like, I wish I brought it up. I wish I figured out a way to acknowledge it, because we were still young at that time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like in that transitionary period where we would still make fun of each other for crying. But in that moment, we were all just, experiencing the film in the way that we can. And it was magical.
I think you're just reminding me, like, I've just heard from so many guys that, like, crying alone at the movies is a thing that guys do. Yeah. Like, that is an okay place to cry, which is interesting. I think it says a lot about how a lot of guys feel about their feelings, so you're not alone there.
I wish I brought it up, man. I wonder how different life would have been. Or they would have just made fun of me, and then that would have been it. Okay, thank you so much, Avi.
My pleasure.
This was amazing. You guys collected yet? I'm going to make you watch the Will Smith scene again. All right, so the next guest I'm really, really excited about. Have you guys ever heard of that podcast called Thirst Aid Kit? You guys know what it's like to be thirsty for somebody? These guys are professionals at being thirsty. It's amazing. So they do like very smart and funny commentary on pop culture. They kind of go through the motions and talk about what they find attractive and appealing in men in the movies. But I love listening to it because for me, it's kind of like a blueprint on how I should be acting and behaving. They're like, oh yeah, I like it when his beard is cut this way. And now I'm just in the mirror and I'm like trying to make it exact. So yeah, it's a good show for everybody. I suggest you guys pick it up, listen to it on your morning commutes. Your partners will appreciate it. Anyways, I want to invite now Bim and Nicole of the Thirst Aid Kit podcast. Superstars.
Oh, what a high bar that nobody can clear.
I'm such a huge fan of your podcast.
Thank you, Arun.
It's so much
Thank you.
fun. Can I just name drop Chris Evans? Because that episode is still just like the funniest thing to listen to in the morning. You end up just cracking up and people are looking at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
They actually got Chris Evans to get on their show.
Yeah.
You know who Chris Evans is? Captain America.
That's the power. Who just snapped? Who was that? I appreciate your. Yeah, he was like, listen, Captain America. Yeah.
It's
he was
real.
Great. Yeah.
And they just talked about his body hair, and they were so down. It was great. Anyways, I want to talk about, how I've always assumed that women are attracted to men who are stoic, and so I tried to be as stoic as possible. I wanted to be that guy who they thought was like a man in the sense who would like be confident and in control and unbothered by like regular stuff. So I have a clip that kind of characterizes exactly how I feel a lot of the time. It's from the movie Jumanji. There we go.
I think we have to save Jumanji.
Damn, that is a man right there.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Don't cry. Oh, there's so many diseases out here. It's hot.
So, that's kind of how I feel a lot of the time. I wonder how you guys see that clip. Is The Rock someone that you guys would thirst for?
I mean, I recognize that he is a very handsome man, but like physically, his body type is not what I would lean towards. But I love his smile. I love his smile. I think he's very funny. As far as like that particular clip of him holding in the tears, while I appreciate that he was trying to be strong, I think for me, it would have been better to see him actually break down a little bit and like be vulnerable with me and show that he trusts me enough to be vulnerable with me, that he is so affected by whatever is going on that he has to save, I guess, this environment, that it makes him emotionally distraught. And like, yeah, be distraught. It's okay. This is a terrible thing that's happening. You can say that you're uncomfortable or that you're upset, you're distressed by it. That's hot. Like, be open.
Right. I'm similar to you. I can appreciate that The Rock is very blessed. But it's not necessarily the thing that I am myself, like, oh my God. But shout out to him. He's doing amazing, sweetie. He lives at the gym and that's good for him. Yeah. But no, similar to Nicole, I think that scene in particular, of course, he's playing this role of, he's meant to be the big guy, and that's not who he is in his real life. Like this is them inside of the game, it's not his usual self. He's not like his usual show, right? Exactly. And so in this case, it's kind of betraying that scrawny kid who's picked on rather than The Rock. So I appreciate what they're doing, but like Nicole, like I think there is so much power in vulnerability. I think that a lot of the time, it's not that you want to see somebody distressed, but you want to see them distressed so that you know that they are human and you know that they are open and you know that there is feeling there. I think a lot of the time people get caught up in the idea of being like a solid rock, no pun intended. And in reality, you're kind of like, man, if only you were a little bit more porous. Because if you let, that sounded way too dirty. That's not what I meant. But I think the idea of if you can let something in, then you can let something out. Or vice versa. And I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. Because the joke there is, these two people are thirsting for him because he's stoic and they can't see that on the inside he's panicking.
Right.
So that's why I was thinking, like, what message does this send? And it's something that you see in media a lot.
Right. Because I think for many people, strength is physical, right? And that's not the reality of it. It's never been the reality in my life where I'm kind of like, oh no. Like, there's a lot of pseudoscience out there in the world. Women want this, women want that. And it's like, do they? A lot of the time, just ask women. And that's the other thing as well. It's like, what do women want? And I'm like, bruh, they told you. We have a podcast telling you. There's fan fiction telling you. There's romance novels telling you. And you're still kind of like, oh, wow, it's a real head scratcher. What? I don't understand what, like, the media, the culture out there says one thing, but there are many cultures. And it's a matter of where you're looking for cues. Who are you looking to as your guide? And a lot of the time, people are not looking at women to tell them what women themselves want. So in a way, this is, at that point, you're an architect of your own misfortune, generally speaking. Because people have been telling you the shit for, sorry, can I swear? I don't know. Yeah, you can. People have been telling you the shit for a while. That's all I'm saying. And it's kind of like still confusion. I don't get it.
Yeah, but we talk about sometimes on the podcast when we're talking about these actors and their particular roles, and we'll say, he's such a beautiful crier. So it's someone like Michael B. Jordan, Tom Hiddleston when he's Loki, and he's like, tell me, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know, Sebastian Stan.
Yeah. Andrew Lincoln cries. Oh,
yeah, like when you see that their eyes are getting wet, they're welled up, and they let that that one little tear drop. And even if they're just like, I have to stay strong, but you see that one tear, that's enough. Like he's cracked open a little bit. He knows he has to stay strong for whatever the situation is, but he's let me see that it's affecting him, you know, and that's hot. That's like, oh my God, I just want to help you. How can I help you? You know, like that triggers a little something in us. So let the tears out. Like, you don't have to fall on the floor and have a tantrum like a 2-year-old, but you know, just no, that's not hot at all.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
Pick yourself up, sir. Come on. You pay taxes. You're a grown-up. Stop
be
that.
An emotional person. Be a human being. Because again, like Bem said, if you release the tears, because that can be a stress reliever, that can be a way of letting off some steam, and that way also for me as a person who has and not to get like too deep, but as a person who has domestic violence in my childhood, growing up with someone who was very violent in the household, I know that keeping that in can sometimes erupt in unpleasant ways, to put it lightly. So I would rather you just freaking cry than punch a wall. You know what I mean?
Or something else.
Yeah.
Right?
So just cry.
Yeah. It almost feels like at that situation, it might be like tougher to cry in front of someone you want to impress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that takes a lot more courage, I think.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a different way to think about it that I like.
Yeah, because I mean, none of us think that we look good when we're crying. So it's not only you're being vulnerable and like expressing yourself, you're being vulnerable and making these terrible faces. You know, like you get really red or blotchy, or you know, your eyes swell up and you look like you've been stung by a bee or something. Like everyone has different, you know, reactions physically when they cry, and it's just not very flattering. You get very snotty and you're just like a mess. Yeah. You don't want to show that to the person that you love, because you always want to show like the best side of you emotionally or physically to the person that you love. But if you're just like, look at me, how ugly I am, and you're okay with being ugly in front of your partner or whomever, that's amazing.
So how would you rank being emotional in like your chart of being desirable? Like if beards are like here, like where does crying kind of go?
Oh wow. Okay, beard, hairy forearms. I would say emotional vulnerability is right
with
there.
hairy forearms.
Yeah, right after hairy forearms, because I mean I do want like the protector, provider kind of strongman vibe, but I also want I don't know, I want the guy that's gonna cry with me when we're watching Dirty Dancing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like sorry.
She's clutching. She's like, yes, yes. It's like you're at church. You're like, yes. Yes, I received the blessing. Yes,
it's sweet. It's like the guy who I'm a cat person. So the guy, I love the accounts where there are a bunch of men cuddling cats, because that's so sweet. Oh my God! And that cats are not, you know, the manly pet, right? Men. I don't know if anybody out there is swiping on the apps, but there's always a dude with his dog. Like, I don't care. You know, like you're showing me that you can walk your dog or whatever. So what? If you're good with a cat, that's amazing.
I have to strongly and roundly disagree with that. I'm a dog person. Fuck a cat. But anyway.
Terrible.
What is a cat even?
Cats are beautiful creatures.
God bless you.
You have to earn a cat's love.
Shout out to you.
A nice little, if you're like this big burly dude who's got a cat on his shoulder, on his chest, you've earned this cat's love. That means you're very soft and gentle.
I'm super happy for you. In any case.
Dogs are just like, whatever.
I'm so mortally offended. But anyway, I love dogs. And yeah, I do see the... I mean, also, there are too many dudes with dogs on the apps. Like, we get it. You like dogs.
Yeah. Right.
So I hear what you're saying on that score. But I personally do enjoy... I much prefer a dog to a cat. But I think in terms of, like, you were saying, I do think that it's not a coincidence that so many straight women I know like a dude who is good with animals to an extent. Because again, it's sort of a shorthand to you care about something other than yourself. So you might have mastered at least 10% of your emotional ability, so that's good. And then I think in the ranking, you know, actually a beard is not that important to me. It's fine. It's whatever. I mean, it has to be luxurious or what's the point? But then otherwise, shout out to fluff. It's like, okay, I too can grow a beard. What's that got to do with anything? If I set my mind to it, women can do anything, like whatever. But then, and then the second thing I think is kind eyes. I think a lot about people who are mean, and you can see it in the way they carry themselves. Like they are pinched, and there's a cruelty that you can spot, and you think, well, if you would be cruel to somebody else, you could turn that on me, and I don't want that. I'm not excited by a bad boy. I'm just like, right, man, go to therapy. I can't fix you, and I don't want to. I think about that quote, women are not rehabilitation centers for bad men, and I'm like, amen. I haven't got time. Like, honestly, I have so many of my own neuroses. I cannot add yours to my already overfilled basket. It's kind of like, bro, I'm already paying shipping on this. I'm not doing it with yours. And then after that is emotional vulnerability. Because I do think the kind eyes and potentially the beard show that you might be open to being a good person. But then the emotional vulnerability, I think you have to kind of be able to feel as though I don't have to hide parts of myself.
Right.
We did an episode recently where we spoke about the hot priest from Fleabag. And the hottest thing about him, there was a audible gasp.
Yes.
Yet again, shout out to you. But what we spoke about in that episode was often, it's not so much because, you know, Andrew Scott is, you know, maybe 5'7". He's not necessarily like the hulking guy that people have said is what women want. The sexiest thing about Hot Priest is that he listens.
Yes.
He sees Fleabag and he listens. He sees her in minute ways and in large ways.
Yes.
And there is nothing hotter on God's green earth. Like, there is nothing.
Right.
You look at someone and they look back at you and you see yourself reflected in their eyes and they're... Listen. Is there a cigarette? Like, no, I'm kidding. But like, it's incredibly attractive. It's the feeling of like, I don't have to hide anything.
Right.
And this person sees it. And even when they're kind of slightly repulsed, because as great as I am, some of the stuff is not great. But then they see it and they don't flinch from it. And I think in order to do that, you have to be emotionally open. Otherwise, there's no room for you to take in anything else.
Yeah. I'm a bit conflicted though. I'll tell you what. I think it kind of seems to me that like to be stoic, you need to be able to hide and control those emotions. And to also be emotional, you need to be able to be tapped into it and let them go. And it can sometimes feel like when you're in a given situation, you kind of need to choose between the two. And that could be really confusing, I think, for me, where I think, you know, for like my partner, I want her to see me as someone who's like a protector and a provider. So I'll try as hard as I can. When I'm like emotionally conflicted, I might let one tear down, but like my face is going to be like a dog face, you know what I mean? Like trying to like be as composed as possible. Because if she were to see me like, why could you do this to me? I think that's going to like really severely affect that image of like the protector and provider. What do you think?
Okay, I understand that. So let's say that you were in an accident, which hopefully will never happen. You and your wife are in an accident. You need to have a level head in order to make sure that she's okay, that you're okay, that whoever might also be involved in the accident is fine, and you can get to, you know, get help and whatever you may need. But like once you get to the hospital or the clinic or something, I think it's okay for you to be to just like cry a little bit, or just like shake your shoulders and feel the fact that, wow, all this adrenaline is gone, all of this, I'm upset, I almost could have lost you. That's important, right? Like, a lot of women want to know, or a lot of people want to know, you're affected by the thought of losing me, right? Cry about it. Like, be upset. That's important for us to know, whether it's an accident or you're just like, you messed up really bad and she's thinking about breaking up with you or whatever. Be affected by that in some kind of way. Maybe you don't have to sit up there and cry, but show some emotion behind it. So yes, you can be stoic and get through the moment, get through whatever you need to power through, but then later you can just kind of sit and reflect and be like, oh, yeah, this shit almost happened. Like, this could have ruined my world, and let it out.
It's like as simple as paying attention and just knowing what's appropriate for what time.
Yeah.
And I think also it's a not necessarily the correct binary to choose one or the other. A lot of times things go hand in hand. I think you can be both stoic and incredibly emotional at the same time. These are not impossible things. I think about the ways in which the world has trained us to be in the world, and many women know to be stoic and emotional at the same time. Yeah. And the best place to see that for me in my life has been in the office, where some shit goes down and a woman is incandescent with rage. But look at that again.
Yeah.
But then you think to yourself, if I cry, I become the emotional woman in the office. If I raise my voice a little bit, if my voice even trembles a little bit, I am at risk of presenting myself as less than. And so you hold on to it. And yet you feel the things. I have cried in at least 2 bathroom stalls, not anymore. Now I'm a hard bitch. But like, before I would take myself to literally like in a high school movie, and I would go to a toilet cubicle and just sob, very controlled squeaks, just the occasion, which is how you know you're done crying, when you're kind of like taking those deep inhales. You're like, all right, back to work, powder, get out. Wow. But I think there are times when I have cried in the office and I can see people looking and I'm like, you should look. This is what upset looks like. This is emotion. You should see that you've messed up. And a lot of the time also when I'm crying, it's not because I'm sad. Sometimes I'm crying because I'm so angry. And it's a good way. I mean, listen, I love crying. I think when you need it, Nicole and I were talking about this feeling something build up in you. And you know that, man, I'm going to have a really good cry in 6 to 8 hours. Yeah. Like, there's a window where it's going to just like, and you're like, all right, come on. So I'm going to leave the office. I'm going to go home. I'm going to put on some Netflix, make some pasta. And then there's going to be a movie that will unlock what has been building. Yeah. And then I watch it and then I feel good.
Yeah, for me, I watched the clip. I go to YouTube and I watched the clip from Sesame Street where Mr. Hooper died. And they have to tell Big Bird. And Big Bird doesn't understand, and they have to keep telling him, no, he's not coming back.
Why'd you bring that up right now?
Yeah. So that's what I watched when I have to, I know that there's a cry coming, and I need to get it out.
Cry, everyone. Come on.
I have that window later, right after the show.
There you go. 6 to 8 hours. That's your window. You're good.
I'm going to make some pasta.
There you go. Right. There you go.
So I listened to your episode recently about like the desirability of being stern. And I thought there were a lot of like really good lessons in there.
Sorry, I thought it was flashback.
We both just kind of were like, yeah. Sorry, please go on.
So I wanted to know, what are some takeaways that you can share with the audience about that show? About appropriate times to be stern and how it might be actually, one of the recipes for being desirable.
Okay, so we actually talked about characters and not necessarily the actors, but we talked about Inspector Jack Robinson from Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, if anyone watches that. And so Jack Robinson is this very buttoned up, obviously stern man, and Phryne Fisher kind of gets under his collar a little bit, and he's very rigid in his rules, but then he kind of, when he sees that she's in trouble, he comes to her rescue, even though she really doesn't need rescuing, but he's like right there, he barges through, and even though he's still very controlled in barging through the door or like attacking whoever's trying to attack her, he's still very much in control. But the fact that he kind of lets loose this passion that he feels for her, that's what gets me. So you can be stern, rigid, whatever, but you also have these moments where you let the passion out when it's unexpected, and that's awesome.
What are some other celebrities that you guys think have like the perfect ratio of stern and emotionability?
I don't know. I think there's a reason why we chose the characters, because we have so much knowledge of the characters where we don't for people's personal lives. I think often about when we think of portrayals of sternness, it's often a character. It's not necessarily the actor. One of the actors that we did kind of talk about was Holt. I don't know how to pronounce his surname, but he's the guy who plays Bill Tench on Mindhunter. If anyone watches Mindhunter on Netflix, he has that thing of being incredibly focused on his job. We had a guest last week's show where she spoke about people who look as though they go to work and then they come home. And I was like, yeah, that's hot. Out in the streets, like, come on. When I'm at home, come on. Like, but he has that vibe. And then on top of it, he's, like I said, he's super good at his job. He's focused, he knows what he's doing. And then there are moments when the horror of his job is so great. And that in those moments, you see him break a little bit. He his shoulders are not so straight. They crumple a little bit. He's incredibly tender with victims of violence. His voice changes its tenor, its cadence. He's being a carer in the middle of also being this person who is incredibly good at their job. They are competent. They are the protector. They are the provider. But they are also just incredibly human. And Bill does this thing. The character Bill Tench does this thing where he maintains eye contact. He kind of doesn't touch people who haven't intimated they want to be touched. He understands distance. He gets the human because he's looking and seeing. And I think that's what I think it's a case by case situation. But I do think, yes, there's time for sternness and stoicism, and there is also more than ample time to also just be a human being. A lot of the time, that is all people are really looking for, is to kind of look across at someone and see a human being.
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway here is if you're a man and you're still conflicted about times to be stoic and times to be emotional, take some cues from the women in your life. They seem to have it figured out.
Society made them figure it out.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Like, none of us are born intrinsically able to handle shit more than other people. We learn how to be. And I think so often I do think men just need to learn how to be, and there are people that you can learn from all around you. It's not even difficult.
It's the perfect place to end it right there. This is the magic of First Aid Kit, people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was incredible. How do you guys feel right now? Yeah? Up for a cry? You guys want to meet me after and cry it out? All right, so that's the show. I wanted to thank the Green Space for having us here, for being incredible hosts, for putting together this incredible set, allowing us to talk our talk. I want to thank you guys for answering the call and actually showing up for a taping of a podcast. Like, who does that? That's pretty cool. I appreciate it, seriously. But unfortunately, it has to come to an end, like all good things. But Man Up will be back for season 2 when?
November 13th.
All right, so they're going to be closing this place up. You ain't got to go home, but you know the saying. Yeah, basically. All right, thank you, everybody.